Mic check. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Mic check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Mic check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Not getting anything? Yeah. Go ahead and talk. Oh, that's. Okay. Go ahead and just talk. Mic check. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, all the way. It's really low.
You guys are on mic or line?
Line.
Oh, I'm on mic. Yeah, and I'm perfect. No.
Should be on mic. I feel like I'm getting a buzz. Yeah, I'm getting a buzz.
Mic check. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Getting that, but it's just a buzz.
Mic check. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Happened to me last night, and I just changed. Wait, no, that's not me. That's hers. Yeah,
Oh, yours is fine.
yeah. Just move that one.
Why are you moving Sorry.
No, go for it. Mic check. 1, 2. All right.
Good morning, Governor. Good to see you. Good morning, everyone. I'm State Representative Don LeBrun. Please rise, remove your caps, and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Hillsborough County Commissioner, Ms. Toni Pappas.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. It's my pleasure today to welcome you to our, I believe it's our 26th New Hampshire town meeting for Governor Christie. So he's really been working awfully hard. And I know that so many of you in this room have spent lots of time, some of you have already made up your minds, but lots of time listening to and enjoying and mulling over and asking questions of various presidential candidates. And I've done the same. And today I have made a decision, and I'm proud to announce that I would like to endorse Governor Chris Christie from New Jersey. And I think the governor is very experienced, he's intelligent, he's tough, he's strong, he's articulate, and he has some really practical solutions to the nation's problems. And I believe that he's delivered remarkable results for the people in New Jersey, which is a blue state. And unlike politicians in Washington, D.C., he did so while working with the legislature of the opposite party. And he has reduced the size of government, vetoed more tax increases than any governor in American history, and has provided New Jersey with excellent leadership during the most trying of times. No other candidate, I believe, has the experience and the resolve which will restore the American dream. So please welcome Governor Chris Christie.
Thank you. Well, that's a good way to start a town meeting. Get an important endorsement. Toni, thank you. Thank you for your willingness to commit to help us. Thank you for what you do here in New Hampshire and Hillsborough County every day. It's really important. And it's part of what makes the New Hampshire primary so great, is that you can come up here, start to meet folks that you've never met before. They're willing to sit and to listen to you and to get to know you and then to make a decision. That's one of the things I really like about New Hampshire. People are not afraid to decide, and that's good. And we're getting into deciding time now. You know, we're in October. The summer was dating time. Everyone likes to date in the summer. That's good. Summer was dating time. Now it's deciding time, and we're starting to get into that phase, and I appreciate Toni deciding and being with us. I appreciate all of you coming here this morning and having some breakfast and getting to listen to me. I'm just going to talk to you briefly about a couple of things and then spend the rest of the time answering your questions. But before I do, I want to let you know that we have had a lot of fun up here the last day and a half now. And I say we, I don't mean the royal we. I have brought reinforcements with me. My wife of 29 years, the First Lady of New Jersey, is here this morning. Let me introduce my wife, Mary Pat, to all of you. I don't know if any of you watched Greta Van Susteren last night, but Mary Pat and I got interviewed by Greta last night. I don't know how she got us into it, but she got us into how we met, who picked up who. At the interview, I was like, I can't believe I answered all those questions. I should be much better at dodging stuff like that, but it gave you a little insight into who we are and as a couple. Because, quite frankly, you know, the single most influential person on my presidency will be her. She'll be the first person I speak to in the morning. She'll be the last person I speak to at night. She'll be the one person who's probably going to be able to give me her opinions without anybody else standing around listening. And you need to know need to know about who our spouses are, because they will be, no matter what anybody says or thinks, if you have a good marriage, they will be the most important influence on how you conduct yourself and how you make decisions when you're president. And so it's important for you all to get to know my wife, and that's why she's been up here to New Hampshire almost as much as I've been. And I think it's important for you guys to get to see her and know her and listen to her too. In fact, I'm thinking about making her do a town hall meeting at some point up here. She's saying no, but I'm fairly persuasive. I convinced her to marry me, for gosh sakes, so I'm fairly persuasive at times with her. A couple of things off the top. Campaigns evolve over time. Right, so when you start to campaign for a job like this, and with a campaign that goes on as long as the presidential campaign, different things come up and become less important or more important over time. It seems to me that in this campaign, America's role in the world and foreign policy and national security are becoming more and more important every day. Because just when you think it can't get worse, it does. And so now in the last 48 hours, we see Russia launching missiles into Syria. And are they launching missiles to do what the president said they were going to do? To fight ISIS? Only people like Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton would actually think that Vladimir Putin was going to Syria to help us fight ISIS. And quite frankly, Donald Trump too, who said, oh, let Russia fight ISIS and then we'll clean up afterwards. Someone needs to fill these folks in. Russia doesn't care about ISIS. Not one lick. What they care about is reestablishing influence in the Middle East. What they care about is propping up a murderous dictator in Assad. You come on through. You have important stuff to do here. Yeah, I am the last person to get in between someone and their food. I want to let you know that. No way. You got food, you bring it right on through. Let's remember something. This is all created by the President of the United States. Okay, this is a president who stood up and said that if Assad used chemical weapons on his people, we would take him out. His words, not mine. And then he used chemical weapons on his people, and he said, never mind. But worse than never mind, he said to Putin, could you come and help me? And invited Putin back into the Middle East, a place where we had kept him out of for 40 years. The old Soviet Union and now Russia had been out of the Middle East for 40 years due to our alliances with Israel and Egypt, and now we invited him back in. That's like, seeing a guy who knocks over a bank, and you see him running out with the money, and the guy's looking for a way to escape, and you say, hey, if you need a ride, hop in my car, I'll bring it back to my house. He didn't rob you, but he's capable of it. It's not as if we didn't know what Vladimir Putin's capable of. He's a KGB thug, everybody. He's in a nice suit and a nice haircut, and he's articulate and bright, all the rest, but he's a KGB thug. And we invited him back in, so should we be surprised now that what he's doing is bombing Syrian rebels trying to fight to reestablish a decent, humane government in their country? Folks that we're training, he's now killing. I mean, it's incredible. And you heard Putin last week say, if America wants to do anything in Syria, they need to come to me first. And you saw yesterday that we diverted American planes away from Russian planes. Barack Obama is the turn, tail, and run president of the United States. He is showing everybody right now what a world without American influence will look like. Iraq on fire, Libya on fire, Syria on fire. Hundreds of thousands of people literally running for their lives away from Syria to Europe and to other Middle Eastern countries. Yemen in turmoil. China being aggressive in the South China Sea while we're being distracted by everything else that's going on around the world. And this is what a post-American world will look like. Chaos, run by crime families, posing as nation states like Iran and Russia. So this president's philosophy has been, if America doesn't act, no one will hate us and the world will be good. Well, we have now seen nearly 7 years of that philosophy by Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, by the way, who supports all the things that he's doing and was the architect of them in the first term. And it is a more dangerous, difficult world, and one that needs a reassertion of American strength. And when I end this point, let me just be clear with you. That does not mean that America needs to be the world's policeman. It doesn't mean that we have to send troops all over the world. That's not what we need to do. They need to know we're willing to do that, but it's not what we need to do. What we need to do is to reassert American influence around the world, to let our allies know that when there are problems, we will be there for them, regardless of whether polls go up or down. And our adversaries need to know the limits of our patience. Now, lots of different things are said about me over time, some good, some not so good, but I will tell you that it's never been said that I am misunderstood. It's never been said, oh, that Christie, he's too subtle. People don't understand him. When you make me president of the United States, Vladimir Putin will understand the limits of America's patience. And believe me, by the way, it's not going to take a lot to put him back in his cage. Okay, for those of you who are boxing fans out here, he's punching above weight. His economy is in shambles. His military is on decline. And we're just letting him do it. So if you let somebody come in your house and steal your food, and you don't push back, well, heck, they'll keep stealing it. But the minute you push back, if they're hitting above weight, they're going to wind up backing off. That's what America needs to do again. Need to assert ourselves. And we will. When I'm president of the United States, we will. There will be clarity, and there will be bumps in the road because of that, no doubt. Liberal media will scream and yell about how awful this is. Remember, this is the same group of folks who gave Barack Obama the Nobel Peace Prize. I wonder if they want to revote on that one. Look at what's going on around the world. And Barack Obama's Nobel Peace Prize. Fact is that we need a president who's going to put American interests first. And that's exactly what I'll do. Second thing I want to talk to you about is how important it's going to be for the next president to also focus on opportunity at home. Mary Pat and I have 4 children. 2 of them are in college right now. Andrew's a senior and Sarah's a sophomore. And we graduated from college together. She's younger, of course, but right around the same time in the mid-1980s. And when we graduated from college in the mid-1980s, we were not worried about getting a job. Our biggest concern was which one would we pick? Which one would be the best option for us in our careers? And our children feel very differently. Last Christmas, we had a group of our son's friends to our home. He goes to college in New Jersey, and a group of his friends came to visit. And we heard from all of them, bright young men, about how hard it was for them to even get summer internships. And, you know, the fact is that that's not the kind of America we want for our children and grandchildren. And so we need to have a country again that very simply states that government is not the way to solve these problems, that you are the way to solve these problems. See, right now we have an absolute difference of opinion. You see Hillary Clinton, and every solution she has for creating more jobs involves the government doing more things in your life. And my philosophy is, if the government would just get out of your life for 5 minutes, you might actually have the time to create jobs yourself, to use your energy, your ingenuity, your great ideas, to be able to build your business, advance your career, and create energy and activity in this country, in this economy, like we had in the 80s and the 90s. We need government to pull back and to not be involved in every aspect of your life. We need a tax system that is not rigged for the wealthy. And we know that this tax system is rigged for the wealthy. We know it is. So that's why the tax plan we put forward says this: get rid of every loophole and every special interest gimmick and just leave two things on your tax form: the home mortgage interest deduction and the charitable contribution deduction. If you use deductions, those are the ones real people use to deduct the interest they pay to stay in their homes and to support charities in their community and their state that they believe are doing good things for the less fortunate. All the rest of them, get rid of them. And when we do that, we can lower our rates down to 28% on the high end and 8% on the low end, 15% in the middle. 3 brackets, that's it. 8, 15, and 28. And then you could do your taxes in 15 minutes. Imagine. Just go in, here's how much I made, here's how much I paid in mortgage interest, deduct that. Here's how much I made in charitable contributions, deduct that. There's the number, multiply it times the bracket, send your check, and be done. 2 great things about that. All right, the first is you're gonna be able to keep more of your money. The second one is, can you imagine with that kind of form how many IRS agents I'm gonna be able to fire? It's gonna be tremendous, absolutely tremendous. And we've done this stuff in New Jersey. You know, when I know you can be suspicious when politicians say, don't worry, the government will be smaller when I'm president. Well, when I came in as governor of New Jersey, from that moment, January of 2010 to today, we have 9,600 fewer employees in state government than the day I walked in the door. It was a 15% decrease in the number of employees that we have in state government. It's a significant number. And by the way, I did all that without laying anyone off. When people quit, I didn't replace them. We reorganized, we managed, and we continue to deliver services for the people in New Jersey at probably even a better level of service than we did before, and we're doing it for much less money. That's the same kind of management skills we need to bring, and that's different than other experiences that people have in this race. So when I tell you that we're going to do this on taxes, you can take it to the bank, because we're going to make the government smaller and we're going to make it smarter, because we have to. Because by the way, we have $18 trillion, almost $19 trillion now in debt. Time to get serious about the credit card, everybody. And that's another thing we need to do for our children. So we need to focus on these things at home. Last thing being this, and we'll talk about this if you have questions during the rest of our meeting, but we have to reform our entitlement system. 71% of all federal spending this year are on entitlements and debt service. 71%. And you don't hear any other candidate talking about this. None of them have a plan except for me. None of them are talking about it. You know why? Because they don't trust you. They figure if they just bring up the phrase entitlement reform, you're going to get so scared and so angry that you're just not even going to listen to anything else they say. That's the difference between me and them. I trust you. I trust you to run our economy. I trust parents to make their educational choices for their kids and their community. And I trust you to understand that it is a stupid debate to have when we spend 3 hours on CNN talking about the 29% and almost no time, except for one question, talking about the 71%. And if you want to understand where we've gone to with 71%, when Jack Kennedy was elected president in 1960, 26% of the federal budget was on entitlements and debt service. It's now 71%. We are spending nearly 3/4 of all of our money looking in the rearview mirror and not looking through the windshield at America's future. And we need to change that. And I'll talk to you more about that if you have questions as we go forward. All of those things are about getting our house in order at home so that we can be a force for good around the world, and we'll have a safe and secure country for our children and our grandchildren. All that's only going to happen if you have a leader who knows how to fight and how to do it in a way that makes sense and gets things done, not just yelling and screaming, but actually getting things done. And I'm so tired of watching Washington, D.C., and quite frankly, watching this Republican Congress engaged in this Game of Thrones they're engaged in down there. Who's going to be speaker? Who's going to be majority leader? That's what this city's become all about in Washington. What title do you get? Who gets the most goodies? Who gets the bigger office? I mean, that's not what they were sent there to do. And that's why I'm for term limits, everybody. Because they should have 12 years and get out of Washington, D.C. No more than 12 years for anybody in Congress. I mean, heck, I can only have 8 years as governor. I can only have 8 years as president. So the governors and the president is dispensable. But somehow Congress is indispensable. And I tell you, I'll watch what's going on down there. I think they look very dispensable. And we need to start dispensing with them. Yeah, I am being kind. You're right. So I want to get to you asking me questions. So there's only one rule in my town hall meetings. You raise your hand, I call on you. Don't yell out questions, because I don't respond to yelled out questions. The reason why is not because I'm governor of New Jersey or candidate for president of the United States. The reason I don't respond to yelled out questions is because Mary Pat and I are the parents of 4 children, which means that we have a finely honed and developed skill to ignore things that are being yelled at us. I'm sure you do too. So raise your hands, ask questions. I'm happy to answer them on anything. You'll notice as you came in today, nobody asked you to write your question on a card so that my staff could filter it and I could just get to answer the ones I like to answer. You ask me whatever you like, I'll give you an answer. You may not love the answer, but it's going to be the same answer here this morning at MoeJoes as it was last night at the VFW Hall in Raymond, as it will be later tonight at my next town. I'm doing 3 town halls today, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. All right, so I think that's my staff making sure I don't eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But it is breakfast, lunch, and dinner today, and the answers will be the same. If you come to all 3, first, God bless you. But second, it'll be the same answer every time. So if you hear one you like, that's really good news. And if you hear one you don't like, maybe not so good news. But raise them up. Who's got questions for me? Yes, sir, right there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Governor, this is my 4th town hall seeing you speak. So at this point, you're about to earn my vote.
All right.
Based on your answer here. But yeah.
Pressure's on now.
No, it's
Okay.
yeah. So my family's had to deal a lot with cancer. Luckily, we have really good insurance. Most of my family has Blue Cross Blue Shield because most are teachers and doctors. But the cost of these treatments, the life-saving treatments, not just cancer but other treatments as well, is through the roof expensive. Even with good insurance, I think the issue is actually the price. Because either way, it's either the insurer's paying for it or you're paying for it. So no one's really addressed the issue of the price. And I'm not one to say, that they're price gouging or that we should, stop innovation. But the price of these life-saving treatments are really expensive. So I was curious on what your thoughts were on the issue.
Sure. I think one of the biggest problems in this is that you're unusual. And I mean this, that most people don't know. Well, that you came to 4 of my meetings, it's, that's something, that's somewhere to start. But it's that most people don't know how much it costs. Right? We have built a system now where people really don't know what healthcare costs. Right? If you have insurance, and you may experience this, I get these statements at home, right? And our daughter recently had some minor surgery. And I got the statement from the insurance company at home. And I think I remember the numbers right. They said the bill from the doctor for the surgery was $10,500. And then they said, we'll pay $3,500. And then the rest of it just went away. And I paid whatever my deductible part was. So I begin to wonder, is the whole thing just a game? The doctor writes $10,500 down as his bill or her bill, but with no expectation that they're actually going to get $10,500. The insurance company accepts that bill, pays $3,500 under the idea that somehow someone's going to make up the difference, but no one does. And in fact, you're not even required to. They tell you on the form, here's what you owe. And it was a few $100s. I think we need to have much more transparency in what things cost so that people know what healthcare costs this country. Because I think if they knew, there would be enormous pressure put on those prices. There's no market pressure on those prices now because it's a very small group of people, as you noted, who ever really get in the detail of how much this stuff really costs and whether we're being told the truth or not. And so I think the solution to this problem is transparency. And that every time you go into a hospital, they need to give you a list of what everything will cost. You started to see some of that? That would become a real issue for folks. We need publicity on this. We need public attention and sunlight on what's going on in healthcare because we spend more than any nation in the world on our healthcare. Now, do we get good results? Yes, and there's some argument about whether our results are the best or not, but let me tell you, Seems to me every time someone is really sick around the world, they come here. So you can give me whatever statistics you want, but the statistic I believe is when a really wealthy person from somewhere else around the world gets really sick, they're coming to America to get treated. Now, one of the things that we have to be careful about is something that Hillary Clinton's proposed. She's now proposed, to put price caps, price controls on pharmaceuticals. This is a really bad idea. The fact is, every day you've got great scientists out there who are trying to find the next cure, the next treatment for those serious diseases you're talking about. And it's almost like exploring for oil. You drill a lot of dry holes before you hit a gusher. I don't know how many times they hit a dry hole before they came up with Lipitor or Crestor. But it has changed the way we treat heart disease in this country and has diminished the number of heart attacks we have in this country. They put a lot of money into trying to figure that out. So they have to make some of that money back. We're a capitalist society. They need to make some of that money back. And if we don't allow them to, they're just not going to do it anymore. They're not going to explore for the next new cure, the next new treatment. So we got to be smart about the way we do this. And we can't just put price controls on it. That's the easy way to do it, and that's the democratic big government way of doing it. Don't you worry about prices. We'll control the big bad companies. Well, then who's going to do the research? So it's a real balance here. I think the biggest way to do this is, especially on medical treatments and hospital costs, is to make it transparent and to stop paying fee for service. That's the other thing that's driving this cost up. And what I mean by that is, a doctor gets paid every time he or she performs a different service. So what is the incentive? To perform more services, and not necessarily ones that you need. But it's driven by two things. You get paid for a service. The more services, the more pay. People are going to try to do that. And second, because we need tort reform in this country to lower costs as well. Because I know I spent the first 7 years of my legal career defending doctors in medical malpractice cases. And I can tell you for certain that doctors practice defensive medicine. You come in with something, they're not quite sure what it is, they're going to give you every test they can give, because if they miss what you have and you sue them later, they want to be able to say, hey, I performed 28 tests on this guy, and anybody would have missed it. You can't you can't second guess me. So there's a number of ways we have to work on cost here, none of which include price controls. See, but Hillary Clinton will be against tort reform because she's in bed with the trial lawyers. She'll be for price controls because she's for big government and thinks everything can be solved by another government program. I think you got to look at places like the Cleveland Clinic, the Mayo Clinic, who are now paying their physicians based on results, not based upon services. And that's the model I think we need to move to across the whole country. Let's pay for making people better, not for just the next service and the next service and the next service. So those are some of the ideas. It's a really complicated issue, obviously, but I think it's one where we got to be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We do not want to ruin what is one of the most effective healthcare systems in the country, in the world rather, in pursuit of this. We want to try to find the balance between the two, and I think we can. But having Obamacare and having the federal government run everything out of Washington, D.C., not a recipe to me for success. And so we got to examine all those things, and that's the way I would go about it. But I do not want to ruin the ingenuity in the American medical system for finding cures. And I also think, by the way, that we have to invest more money from the government level in the National Institutes of Health and the National Science Foundation. This year, the president only increased the National Institutes of Health 0.1%. Yet his Medicaid spending went up over 20%. Let's get our priorities in order. National Science Foundation's funding went down 4.3% this year. America can no longer be the cutting-edge place of innovation if we're not going to partner with private sector to get things done that way. So all those things are going to contribute to cost and ultimately to making things more affordable for people in the country. All right. Good. Just coming right behind you with a microphone.
Hi. So your state, New Jersey, has a voluntary public funding system of elections. there's a plan supported by some prominent New Hampshire Republicans like Warren Redmond and Jim Rubins that would let citizens earmark $50 of their own tax money to go to a candidate of their choice, provided those candidates turn down big money contributions. And I'm wondering if you'd support a plan like that.
Yeah, having lived under the system, I wouldn't. And here's why. She's right that we have a public financing system in New Jersey just for the gubernatorial race. And the way it works is this. You can take maximum contributions of up to $3,800, and the state will match that dollar for dollar up to a limit. So you have to raise, I think in the primary, you can raise a maximum of about $3 million, and then you'll have $6 million to spend, but you can't spend over $6 million. And then in the general election, you raise about $6 million, and the state will match that dollar for dollar, but you have to agree to a cap of $12 million. You know, I just don't feel like, with all the pressures we have on taxpayers right now, that we need to get them to finance our campaigns too. And I don't know that it diminishes what people are trying to end here, which is the influence of money. What I think is, we're never going to end the influence of money. What we need to do is to make it open and notorious and transparent, which it isn't right now. You'll see TV ads, I'm sure, right now, all over your television here in New Hampshire, and almost none of them are from the candidates, right? If you hang in there long enough to see the disclaimer at the end, they're all from these independent groups that are supporting us. So the one that supports me is called America Leads. The one that supports Jeb Bush is called Right to Rise. The one that supported Scott Walker was called Unintimidated. Right, so you have all these different groups, and for most of the money that they raise, they're not going to tell you who they got it from or how much. And if they put up an ad, if America Leads puts up an ad that I don't like and that you don't like, and you come to a town hall meeting and you say to me, Governor, I saw this ad that America Leads put up, and I don't like it, and I think you should take it down, I would have to look at you and say, I can't. Because I'm not allowed to coordinate with them. I'm not allowed to tell them what I like or don't like about what they're saying about me in support of me. That's what this system has become. And whenever we try to jerry-rig this thing, here's the problem. And I say this as a recovering lawyer, okay? Lawyers are the people who write the laws, and then the very same folks who help to write the laws then get hired by clients to figure out how to get around the law that they just wrote. And we wonder, like, so why is the system really screwy? Well, that's why. Here's what, in my opinion, we should do. We should take all limits off campaign contributions, and anybody should be able to write a check in whatever amount they want to write to any candidate they want to write it to. But that candidate has to reveal that contribution, the name and the amount, within 24 hours on the internet. So you can go to a website and search me and see every contributor I have, every amount they've paid to me, and when they paid it. So that if I get a contribution on October 15th of this year from some big special interest, and then you come to a town hall meeting and all of a sudden I've changed my position on that issue. I was talking one way in September, and then in November I'm talking 180 degrees opposite, and you see that? Well, you're going to draw the conclusion you want to draw. That's what you're really trying to get at with this. What we're really trying to get at is, are these folks being bought? Are we being bought by the people who give us a lot of money? Right now, you wouldn't even know who's buying us, right? And that's the problem with all this. So every one of these campaign finance reform attempts have been noble, right? The one in New Jersey, it's a noble attempt. They're saying, well, we'll limit the number of contributions you can take and have this cap and all the rest of it. Well, what's happened now? Now they start setting up outside groups that spend money, and you're defeating the whole purpose, and I'm using taxpayer money at the same time. So, I don't think it's an awful idea, but I've seen it in New Jersey, and I don't think it works for what we're trying to get at in this. And so, let's just end the charade. We're a country of 330 million people, from the East Coast to the West Coast. We have to communicate to you if we want to be president of the United States. And unlike all of you in New Hampshire, you know, you don't get to come across the country to your 4th town hall meeting in October. It's 13 months before you're going to vote for who the president's going to be, right? You are a special privileged group of folks. The rest of the country, you and Iowa, there are 48 states. They're going to see us fly into an airport and go to a ballroom and give a speech and maybe walk down a main street every once in a while, but that's going to be it. So we need to communicate to those folks, and it's going to be expensive. And I don't think we should be asking the networks to give us free time either. We're a capitalist society. They have something to offer. We should pay market for it. But that's what I think we should do on campaign finance. And it's, when people first hear it, they say, oh God, no, unlimited contributions, terrible. Just take a moment to digest it, because it's happening anyway. It's happening as we speak, except you don't know it. You don't know who it is and how much it is, and you don't know it. So how about we just let you know it? And then you can make your judgments as to whether we're over-influenced by certain contributors or not. And then that helps to give you a little bit of a window into the character of the person who's asking for your vote. I think that's what we're trying to get at more than anything else. And I don't think there's a perfect solution to this problem, but that's the best one I could come up with. And having lived under the public financing system in 2 different races, I don't think it solves the problem that we're looking to solve. And if we're going to spend that much money, millions of dollars of taxpayer money, we should make sure we solve the problem if we're going to do it. So that'd be my idea. Yes, sir, in the back.
Good morning, Chris.
Good morning.
How are you going to tackle entitlements, and what are you going to do on immigration? 2 questions.
All right, 2 small ones. That's good. All right. We're going to try to keep this one under 10 minutes. All right. Here's the thing. On entitlements, go to chrischristie.com. We have a 12-point plan. The good news for you is at 8:30 in the morning, I am not going to go over all 12 points. I do not want to put you back to sleep now. But those 12 points have been scored, and they save $1.2 trillion over the next 10 years. I'm the only person in this race with an entitlement reform plan, and let me just give you the highlights. On Social Security, Harvard and Dartmouth came out with a study a couple months ago that says Social Security will be insolvent in 7 to 8 years. Not 78 years, 7 to 8 years. Means it's our problem. It's landing on our lap. So why is this? There's 2 big reasons. First, the government lied to you and stole from you, right? They lied to you by telling you they were putting your money and your payroll taxes into a trust fund. Al Gore called it the lockbox. Remember? Who could forget that? And guess what's in the lockbox? A stack of IOUs. They're stealing the payroll tax money now. That's the stealing part. They're stealing it now and spending it on other stuff. Second reason is that a good thing. We're living longer. It's an incredible blessing. It's based a bit off what my answer to his question was. In our healthcare system and our pharmaceutical industry, they're allowing us to live longer and live a better quality of life. The average life expectancy of a woman in America now is 83 years old. The average life expectancy of a man is 79. When these programs were developed, people were dying in their mid-60s. We're now living 15 to 20 years longer. And almost all of that time for most folks is in retirement. And so this system just wasn't built to sustain this type of weight by all these people still being alive and drawing checks off it. So how do we fix it? First is to raise the retirement age. Raise the retirement age 2 years and phase it in over 25 years. This is a fix not for us, but for our children. This will make it, from an actuary perspective, much more sustainable over the course of time. And for those people who are on Social Security now, it doesn't affect them at all. For those of you who are about to come on Social Security, it'll affect you by a few months. So your eligibility will be extended a couple months. So it's 1 month a year for 25 years. Second, we need to turn Social Security into what I've always thought it was supposed to be, which was a safety net program for those who have worked hard and played by the rules, paid into the system, and that check will be the difference between them growing old in dignity and growing old in poverty. And so for someone, in my view, who makes over $200,000 a year in retirement income, you stopped working and you're drawing $200,000 a year or more in income. That means you've got $4 to $5 million saved. If you do, first thing is I say congratulations. Good work. You raised a family, lived your life, and you have $4 or $5 million saved. Great. Second thing I say to you is God bless America. This is the only country you could do that in the world. And lastly, I'd ask you, do you really need that check? Do you need that Social Security check? Is that going to change your lifestyle? When I was developing the entitlement reform plan, I was on the phone one night with our friend Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, and he said, so what are you going to start the campaign talking about? And I said, entitlement reform. And he's like, really? And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, what would entitlement reform mean for me? I go, Mark, for you it means you get nothing. You've done really well in your life. Congratulations, you're not getting anything. Fact is that Social Security needs to be there for the people who really need it, who are going to have to choose between rent and heat and food. Now, understand the argument back is, hey, I paid into the system my whole life. How come I'm not getting my money back? Well, first of all, because they lied to you and stole from you. That's the first reason. The second reason is life isn't always fair. And the third reason is, quite practically, that when you look at the system the way it is now, there are lots of things that you pay for that you don't get money back from. But you get something intangible. For instance, homeowners insurance. We all have a home. If we have a home, we buy homeowners insurance. And we pay that homeowners insurance either through our mortgage or directly to the company on a regular basis. You live in that house for 25 years, everything goes great, no fires, no floods, no robberies. You never make a claim. You go to sell your house 25 years later. Do you invite the insurance company to the closing and say, hey, by the way, been a great customer, paid on time, never made a claim. I'd like some of that money back. And they would say to you, after getting done laughing at you, they would say, no, let me explain it to you, Mr. Christie. Here's what happened. Every night for the last 25 years, you put your head on the pillow having the security of knowing that if you needed it, it was going to be there. That's what you got. And with Social Security, it should be the same thing for us. We should know that Social Security is going to be there for us if we need it. And if we don't, we should thank our lucky stars that we don't need it and make sure that it's there for those who do. And this is no longer a choice. The only other choice, by the way, will be the Hillary Clinton plan, which will be to take the cap off Social Security taxes, off your payroll tax, and have everybody pay more. My only question on that would be this. We're both trying to get at the same problem, which would be for people who make more, they should give more. I want to do it on the benefit end. She wants to do it on the front end. Why would you ever give the government who lied to you and stole from you more money? Because this time they're actually not going to lie to us and steal from us? Really? I mean, I would think at a minimum in the live free or die state, you're not buying that. Maybe some other folks would, but not here. Don't give them more. They're just going to take it and spend it on something else. Every time a member of Congress has a tough decision to make, should I fund this program by raising taxes or cutting other programs? Or, oh, look over there. There's that big pile of money over there that nobody needs right at the moment. They're going to take the money from the big pile over there that nobody needs right at the moment. It's going to happen. It's happened, and it'll happen again. Don't give them more. I do the same thing with Medicare. Increase eligibility age 2 years, phase it in over 25, and for people who make $200,000 or more in retirement income, we right now subsidize their Medicare premiums 75%. I say let's only subsidize those premiums 10%. Make that kind of money, get less of a subsidy. You can afford to pay for it, and then the program is there for all the people who really need it and can't afford to get their health care. Because guess what, everybody? They're going to get their health care one way or the other. They're going to show up in emergency rooms, and then we're going to wind up paying for it that way, and it's much more expensive and much less effective to do it. And on immigration, 5 points. First, build a wall or a fence in the most urbanized areas along the southern border, not the entire 2,000-mile border. Please. Okay, everybody? It's not smart. It's not efficient. It's too expensive. And I've never found a wall or a fence that a determined human being could not get over, under, or around. So let's not kid ourselves. And by the way, I don't care how beautiful the wall is. The Mexicans aren't paying for it. Okay? They're not. I've met President Peña Nieto a couple of times. He's a pretty formidable guy, and I don't care how charming or persuasive the person is sitting across from him, Peña Nieto is not paying for a wall between his country and our country, even if it's beautiful, and even if it says Trump on it, which it undoubtedly would. Being in New Jersey, I know, those names go up everywhere. Second, we need to make sure that we embed FBI, DEA, and ATF agents in with our Border Patrol agents, because they're the ones who are expert at interdicting drugs and guns. And we need to have them on the border. We don't need to have them back in Washington, D.C. or out of other field offices. We need them on the border to stop guns and drugs from coming into our country. Third, we need to use electronic surveillance. We need to use drones and stationary cameras in the more remote parts of the border. Instead of putting people there, let's put electronic technology there. It's cheaper and it's just as effective. And then if we see activity going on in real time, we can deploy people there. But we don't need to have people all along the 2,000-mile border. We have technology to do that. Let's use it. And on the point of technology, I brought this up in New Hampshire about a month or so ago and got lots of attention from my friends in the press when I said that if Federal Express can track a package from the minute it leaves your doorstep to the minute it gets to the doorstep you're sending it to, on your computer, you can click on the number and see exactly where it is. Why is it that people who come into this country on visas, we can't keep track of them? 40% of the 11 million people who are here illegally are here on overstays of visas. They didn't come over the southern border. We invited them in. We said, here, come on, be a tourist for 6 months, be a student for a period of time, be a business person for a period of time. And then they stay. It's like if you invite someone to your house this fall for Thanksgiving, and then 2 weeks later you go up to the spare bedroom, and they're still there. Now listen, you wanted them there for Thanksgiving, they were invited, but you didn't want them there for Christmas, right? But they're saying, you know, this is a really nice bedroom, you got a great bathroom here, we really like it, we just decided to stay. You don't get to just decide to stay. You're invited for a period of time. So here's what I would do. The reaction from the press to this was great, right? They said, Christie wants to track immigrants like packages. No, this was what we call in the English language an analogy. I didn't think that people who write for a living needed to have this explained to them, but apparently I fell down on the job on that one. I didn't mean literally we would track them like Federal Express packages. What I was saying was, if the technology exists to do that, we can do this. An analogy. Thank you. And so I had reporters actually ask me, do you want to put barcodes on people when they come into the country? I had an anchor on CNN on live television say to me, Governor, is your plan to put chips inside people as they come into the country? No on barcodes, no on chips implanted in your arm or your neck or any place else. You know why? Because you already have 10 chips. They're right here and here. Every human fingerprint is unique to that human being. And what I suggest we do is when a person comes into this country on a visa, we take their thumbprint. And we put the thumbprint into a database and then require by law that when you access certain services in this country, everything from renting a car to all kinds of other services that you'll have to do if you're here as a visitor, that you have to give your thumbprint. And if it shows up on the database that you had a 6-month visa and you've now been here 11 months, that is when law enforcement comes in, taps you on the shoulder and says, thank you for coming, it's time to go home. This is not a complex system. And believe me, if Federal Express can do it, we can do it. And I'll even call old Fred Smith, the head of Federal Express, ask him to come in for a few months and fix it. We could get this done. Fifth point is E-Verify. Every employer in this country should be required to use E-Verify, every one. And we've got to be honest with ourselves. It's not just the folks south of the border who are the problem here. We're the problem. We're hiring them. And we're hiring them, businesses are hiring them to make more money. They can hire them cheaper. They don't have to pay payroll taxes on them. They don't have to do all the other stuff you have to do. They're probably not paying workers' comp. They're not doing all this other stuff. And they're making more money. So what we need to say to the businesses are, use E-Verify. And if you hire someone who's illegal, the fine will be double what you made off them. That'll get their attention real fast. Because business is in business to make money. And if they think it's now a loser rather than a winner, they're going to stop. And if we stop hiring them, they're going to stop coming. Because unlike what Hillary Clinton thinks, they're not coming here to vote. They're coming here to work. And if they can't get work, they're not going to come. And if they can't get work, they're not going to stay. So those are 5 points that are doable, affordable, and realistic to secure our southern border. They're not building a wall for 2,000 miles and hoping. And now I hear that the wall's going to have a big door in the middle of it. That's what I just heard recently. The wall will have a big door in the middle of it. We're going to, and by the way, we're not going to deport 11 million people in 2 years. I want you to understand that. And I want you to understand what that means. I just want you to picture this. To deport 11 million people in 2 years, you have to deport 15,000 people a day, every day, for 2 years. That means every law enforcement officer, local, county, state, and federal in this country will be doing nothing other than rounding up those 15,000 people a day and sending them somewhere. Where? I'm not exactly sure. But that's what you'd have to do every day. So please be careful of all these candidates who tell you things that sound really good, but you need to ask the second question, how? And then when they get pressed on that, they say, well, we'll just send them out for a couple of minutes, and then the good ones can come back. The good ones? How we know? How do we know which ones are the good ones or the not good ones? This is a sophomoric conversation. So let's fix the problem. And the problem is that we have a porous border that needs to be fixed. Let's do it in a way that everyone understands is practical and makes sense and is affordable. And then we can deal with what we do inside the country. But the American people don't want to talk about what's going to go on inside the country till we stop the problem. And that's what we need to do first. And as president, that's what I would do first. I don't know if that was under 10 minutes or not, but I did the best I could. Yes, sir.
Hi, Governor Christie. Thanks a lot for being here.
Sure, thank you.
I like to think of you as the candid candidate. I really appreciate your honesty. So, my parents live in Connecticut, and when Hurricane Sandy hit the eastern seaboard, I guess coming up on 3 years ago now, it did a lot of damage to my yard, and a tree fell on my house. And the next year, another storm took out another tree, and even though we had rebuilt the part of the house where the tree fell on, another tree fell on the house again. So obviously, I'm really concerned about climate change and about the impact of increased severity of storms. And so I'm wondering that because we need to protect our families from the dangers imposed by increased storms, from climate change, do you agree with the science that we needed to keep 80% of fossil fuels in the ground to protect our families?
No. First off, I would say to you that having gone through Sandy, no one has shown me any evidence that Sandy happened because of climate change. The climate's changing all the time. Now, I'm not one of these folks who argues with that. Okay, I've said I believe climate change is real, and I think that human activity contributes to it. I don't think that's like splitting the atom kind of stuff, everybody. Everything we do contributes to that, and so that's okay. Climate's always been changing. The question is then, what do you do to deal with those issues in a way that helps to make our world safer, not only from storms, but quite frankly, what makes it safer for everyday living, breathing, clean water, all the rest of it. So I don't think leaving 80% of fossil fuels in the ground is a solution. In fact, I think it's a gross overreaction to the problem. Let's take New Jersey, for instance. We, by 2014, have already met our clean air goals for 2020. And unlike New Hampshire and Massachusetts and Maine and Connecticut and Rhode Island and New York, we are no longer a member of the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. What I believe a truly stupid idea, that a small group of states in the northeastern part of the United States could impose a cap and trade plan on their citizens, increase their utility costs, and save the world. Not going to happen. And we can do it without increasing people's utility costs. How do we do it in New Jersey? How do we reach clean air goals for 2020 by 2014 without having cap and trade? 53% of our electricity in New Jersey is generated by nuclear power. 53%. We have to revisit nuclear in this country, everybody. Yes. You know, it's 26 years since 3 Mile Island. It's time to revisit nuclear technology for generating electricity in this country. If you care about the issues you just mentioned, then you need to be willing to reconsider nuclear. In our state, it's been operating forever, safely, and provides over half of the electricity to the people of our state. Second, we are in the process now of building 4 new natural gas-fired plants that are replacing coal plants. It's a cleaner burning fossil fuel and will be efficient and effective and reliable, and will also help to bring down our emissions. Third, this is the one you'll win a bet on tonight. If you go out to a bar somewhere, you're sitting at the bar, and you say to the guy next to you, name the 3 top solar energy producing states in America. Now, the first 2 are easy, right? California and Arizona. Lots of sunshine, lots of open space in Arizona. You would guess those, right? Here's the one you win the bet on. The third is New Jersey. Yes, the Garden State of New Jersey is the 3rd largest solar producing state in the country. Why? 2 reasons. We partnered with the private sector and the government to give incentives early to the private sector to develop it in a way that could be affordable to people. And guess what? We succeeded. It is affordable to people in New Jersey. And so you know what? Businesses and individuals who are concerned about the environment have said solar is an option. So let's use it in our home. Let's use it in our business. When I fly over New Jersey, going from one place to another, I cannot tell you the number of solar arrays I see. On top of manufacturing plants, on top of businesses, on top of stores, on top of homes. You combine all those things, and we now have reached our clean air goals for 2020, and we took away the cap and trade tax, we lowered people's utility costs, and we have a reliable system of power production inside the state. And we're not having to buy or inordinate amount of power from out of state anymore. That's, I think, the way you go about this. So I believe that the climate is changing. I believe that human activity contributes to it. And I believe we have to do something about it. But one, we shouldn't do things that just make government bigger. And a cap and trade tax makes everything more expensive and gives government that money. I don't think we should do that. And second, we need, as a president now, to bring the rest of the world around. You know, just spend a couple of days monitoring what's going on in China. Man, there are days when people walk around Beijing with surgical masks on because they cannot breathe the air in China without surgical masks. And when we say to the Chinese, how about global warming? How about climate change? You know what they say? You had your industrial revolution. We're having ours. This is going to take American leadership around the world to get people to come together to look at alternatives that will help to make the environment safer. So I'm a person who believes we've got to do this stuff, but I do not want to do it in a way that makes America not competitive. And in my opinion, leaving 80% of the fossil fuels in the ground would make America non-competitive. We have enough problems with our economy right now. We don't need to add that burden onto it, and we don't need to add more of a burden onto the utility bills of folks like you in New Hampshire who are already paying some of the highest utility bills in America. Right? So I think that's the way you approach the problem. And we've seen in New Jersey that it can work. It can work. But we got to build some nuclear reactors, everybody. We've got to do that. We've got to rely more on natural gas. We've got to look at alternatives that work. Like in New Jersey, solar is a clean energy alternative that works. In Iowa, it's wind. Well, if you tried to do wind in New Jersey, there'd be a lot of cranky people, right? We're the most densely populated state in America. You started putting like windmills on land in New Jersey, forget about dead birds. There'd be a lot of dead people. You know, it would not be good. But we drive around Iowa, and it's big, wide open spaces, and you see for miles and miles and miles huge windmill arrays. It works for them, great. Let them make that choice in Iowa to do it. You know, if we ever figure out a way to make offshore wind affordable on the East Coast, then we have another option. Right now, it's not affordable. And for us, when we looked at solar versus wind, it was a layup. Solar was the much more efficient, affordable way to go. So I think that's the way you have to do it. And let's not be reactionary about this. Let's make common sense, because guess what? The American people will only choose those alternatives that they think are affordable and make sense to them. The rest are all theoretical. So let's do it that way. Yes, sir. Coming up behind you.
Okay, thank you. I agree with a lot of things that you said, and you talked about foreign policy. One of the problems that I see is the fact that Congress doesn't listen to us. They seem to, once they get elected, they're off doing their own thing. If they have this shutdown, everybody pays but them. They still collect their checks, if I'm not mistaken. You know, people fly around in very expensive airplanes with the top-of-the-line food on our tax dollars. Is there anything as a president you can do to get this corrected? Years ago, a friend of mine said, if we don't like it, we'll line them up and ship one out someplace else, and then they'll start listening to us. They don't listen, and even though you're a president, and I assume you will be, what can you do to correct this?
You know, it's limited practically, but powerful kind of rhetorically. So let me tell you exactly what I mean. I can't force Congress to put term limits on themselves, but you can. And if a president gets behind that and the states start to move to amend the Constitution to have term limits, I think you'll get a reaction to that. So can I go and wave a magic wand in Washington and get them to put term limits in place? No, but we can start a movement in our country that gets it done. And if a president gets behind it, it becomes a lot more powerful than if you don't. Second is that you kind of have to drag them back to remember what they're there for. And only a president can do that. I've seen that in New Jersey. You know, in the end, when you're the one person that everybody elects in a state or in a country, there's an enormous symbolic power that goes along with that. And I've always found that in my state, my office is the greatest home field advantage in the state. It's the same office Woodrow Wilson sat in. It's the second oldest continuously operating state house in America. And I could tell you, I've seen legislators who were calling me all kinds of names in the hallway in front of the press. Then when I call them into my office and the door closes and they're looking around at this incredible office where so much history has happened, they think two things, right? First is like, oh, wow, he is the governor. Okay, they take a deep breath, then they look around and they immediately convert to, it could be me. I do this stuff the right way, this could all be mine someday, you know? It's an enormous home field advantage. The President of the United States has to use that with Congress. Let's think about what this president has done. A month or two ago, I read that for the first time in President Obama's presidency, John Boehner was on Air Force One. How is that possible? John Boehner's been the Republican leader in the House of Representatives for Barack Obama's entire presidency. Yet he's never been on Air Force One? Let me tell you this. Nancy Pelosi's still the Democratic leader of the House, and I'm President of the United States. She can come on Air Force One whenever she wants. Come on board, Nancy. Take the M&Ms. Do whatever you want. I don't care. But it's going to give me time to sit and talk with her and to get her to understand that we got a job to do together. I mean, we're going to agree on every issue. We barely agree on anything. But you need to develop these personal relationships in order to persuade them to do their job. And this president's had no interest in that. Talk to Democrats who haven't been to the Oval Office, Democrats who've never been to Camp David, Democrats who've never been in Air Force One. You give the president all of those things and pay for them for him to use them for his advantage, to work for you. So remember something, we don't make anything in government, right? We don't create anything. Well, trouble, yes. I mean tangible, right? So we don't create anything, we don't make anything. Our job is to govern. And the only way you can govern is through personal relationships. And so, for instance, when I was getting ready to be governor of New Jersey after I'd been elected, I had a series of meetings that I asked for with Governor Tom Kean, who was one of my predecessors, was chairman of the 9/11 Commission later on, and really well-respected leader in our state. And I asked Governor Kean if I could come and meet with him once a week during the transition so he could teach me how to be governor, because I'd never been governor before. And I knew that I had stuff to learn, so I'll tell you about the first meeting. First meeting I sat down, I said, okay, Governor, how's this going to work? And he said, I'm going to ask you questions, you're going to give me answers, and then I'm going to critique your answers. So, okay. First question was, who's your best friend? I said, Mary Pat. He said, not anymore. I said, not anymore. He goes, no, your best friend is going to be Steve Sweeney, the Democratic Senate president. I said, Governor, I'm not so sure about that. He goes, oh, no. Now, let me understand who Steve is. He's a Democrat, he's the Senate president, and in his private world, he is president of the Iron Workers Local. Not a wallflower, okay? And a union Democrat. He said to me, your governorship and the success of it is going to depend upon whether or not you make Steve Sweeney your best friend. And you have to do everything you can. Take him out to dinner, take him out for drinks, invite him to the beach house, give him the helicopter, do whatever you need to do to make him your friend. Because if he's your friend, if you two become friends, you have a chance to be successful. And if he's not your friend, you have no chance of being successful. See, I don't think the president looks at Congress that way. You have to. They're indispensable partners in this, and you have to work them. And don't forget, I don't care who you are, and this has happened to me, and I've walked into the Oval Office with presidents that I haven't agreed with. You walk into that building, I'm telling you, it affects you. If you have any blood running through your body, it affects you. And you need to learn to use that. So my approach would be, with the Congress, is try to get them term limited so they're only there for 12 years, and that's it. But also, at the same time, work with them to make them understand that I want to work with them. I want to come to solutions. I just don't want to have press conferences and dueling press releases and talking heads on television yelling and screaming at each other. That's entertaining, but it doesn't move the country forward. In New Jersey, I wake up every morning with a Democratic legislature. Every morning of every second I've been governor. And not close, by the way. 24-16 in the Senate, 48-32 in the lower house. Not close. Not like I'm a couple of votes away. All right, I'm in big trouble. Every morning. But we've gotten things done in New Jersey. We've capped property taxes. We've cut spending $2 billion. We have reformed teacher tenure. We've reformed the pension and benefit system. We've done all those things with a Democratic legislature. It's because every time Steve's in the State House, he comes and sees me. When I'm there and he's there, we see each other. Sometimes the talks are 5 minutes. We talk about what we did on the weekend, how our families are doing, all the rest of it. Sometimes it's 2 hours, and sometimes we're yelling and screaming at each other. Sometimes he says on the front page of the paper, he calls me unspeakable names. I mean, really unspeakable names. Names that I wouldn't even say. She's looking at me going, don't say it. Bad names, you can look it up. But then I'll tell you one last story about this, about how important these relationships are. 2011, we had a very difficult budget session where they would not negotiate the budget with me and they just passed the budget they wanted to pass. It came to my desk and I light item vetoed, I think it was $1.7 billion or $1.8 billion of spending out of the budget. And he was angry. And it was a lot of stuff that he liked that I took out. And they couldn't override the vetoes, so they were stuck with it. And that's when he called me all those names in the newspaper. And I called him to talk to him, and he wouldn't take my phone calls. He refused to talk to me. About 2 weeks or so later, I have asthma. And it's usually very much under control, but this one day, I had an asthma attack. And I was on my way to a bill signing, and the troopers had to divert me to the hospital. So this became like enormous national news, right? I mean, I had an asthma attack. I was fine. I got to the hospital. They gave me treatment. I was good. But I'm laying on a gurney in the hospital watching television. And CNN is like, Governor Christie has been hospitalized. His condition is unknown. They have some expert doctor on it says, it could be a pulmonary embolism. I'm like, a pulmonary embolism? I'm like laying there watching. Do I have a pulmonary embolism? What's happening here? No, Governor's just asthma. He says I can have a pulmonary embolism. You want to call him? It was insanity, right? So I'm laying there on this hospital gurney, praying to get out. The entire National Press Corps waiting outside the hospital to make sure that I was upright. And my phone rings, and it's an unknown number. Now, usually I won't answer that, but I was sitting in this hospital gurney. I didn't want to listen to my pulmonary embolism anymore, so I answered the phone. I answered the phone, and I said, hello, and I heard, Governor? And I said, yes, Steve? And he said, I didn't think you'd answer. I thought you were in the hospital. And I said, I am in the hospital, but I did answer. And there's this long pause, and he goes, are you all right? And I said, yeah, I'm fine. I'm going to be fine. And he goes, because, you know, I mean, all the rest of the stuff is just BS. I mean, like, you're going to be okay. And I said, yeah, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be out of the hospital this afternoon. I'll be fine. And he goes, all right, good. Call me. All right, just call me when you get back home and you feel like talking. That would have never happened, but for the relationship we had developed over the year and a half before that. He wasn't talking to me, and then he saw that his friend was sick, and he called. That's where we have to get back to in Washington. We have to get back to the fact that there is business, and then there's everything else. And we got to work together to make the everything else happen. And that means effort by one person primarily, and that's the President of the United States. I say to people all the time in New Jersey, I have drinks and dinner with people that I cannot stand. It's part of the job. And my job is to make sure they don't know I can't stand them. Right? But you asked for the big job. It's part of it. This president's abandoned that. That's why the city's so dysfunctional. And you got to get back to doing it. And that, along with hopefully term limits, would be the way I would do it. I will get to you, don't worry. But you've asked before, so I'm going to get some people who haven't asked before, but I'll get to you before we go. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
It seems today with all these mass shootings that people aren't as shocked about the shootings anymore. They're more wondering how the president's going to respond to it. That seems to be all I see on social media. So I'm just curious, if you were president, how would you respond to a mass shooting?
Well, let's take Oregon, for instance, since it was the most recent one. I would not have gone out into the White House press room and railed about how this should be politicized. Because I'll tell you what I would be thinking about. What I would be thinking about are the parents, the spouses, the children, the relatives of those 9 people. And I would be thinking that if they were sitting by a television set at that moment, what they'd want to hear from their president was, we're thinking of you. We're praying for you. And as a father, I cannot imagine the grief that you feel for sending your kid off to college one day and having them come back in a body bag. That I don't know how, what I would say to them is, I don't know how you get out of bed. I don't know how you get out of the fetal position. I don't know how you put one foot in front of the other. Because if I lost one of our children that way, I don't know how I would deal with it. And so what I'd say is, I'd look into the camera and say to the American people, tonight, pray for these people. Pray for these people and think of them and make sure you send as much of your power and your energy to them to get through what they need to get through. That's the first thing I'd say, because that's the most important thing you have to say. As a human being, forget for a moment you're president of the United States. You're a human being, and you should relate to it as a human being. Secondly, I'd say to folks, and listen everybody, one of the most uncomfortable issues to discuss in the world is mental health. It is a mysterious thing, and very few of us completely understand it. But we know that we need to do more in this country about mental health treatment. We know we do. These mass shootings are almost always perpetrated by someone who people say afterwards, yeah, we knew he was disturbed. We knew there was something wrong with him. Yet we don't talk about it. We talk about it after. We need to talk about it before. And we need to make it easier for doctors to involuntarily commit these folks who are talking about committing violent acts, who we know are disturbed. Not only to protect us, but to protect them from themselves. Because most of these mass shooters wind up dying, and they wind up dying at their own hands most of the time. And so we need to protect them from themselves, and we need to protect us from them. And right now we make it very difficult for doctors and law enforcement to be able to do that. Yet all we want to talk about are the guns. The guns don't shoot themselves. It is the person with the gun in their hand that thinks that somehow this is a logical, reasonable reaction to whatever is disturbing them. So we need to have more mental health treatment in this country, and we need to have it be more aggressive. And it's the same way I feel about drug and alcohol treatment. We should be done after 30 years of throwing everybody who's a drug addict or an alcoholic in jail because they commit crimes to be able to sustain their addiction. We need to treat our way out of this problem, not jail our way out of the problem. And with half of our federal prison population being nonviolent drug addicts, you would think we'd get the message by now. Treatment works. And if it works for drug addicts and alcoholics, it will work for those who are mentally disturbed too. So those are the two things I would say if I were president. And then I'd leave, because you don't need to hear any more from me. That's what I would do. And I think what the president did last week, quite frankly, was obscene. It was absolutely obscene and unfeeling to those families. And I just think, you know, that was the moment when I was watching that last week where I said to myself, he's tired of the job. He's worn down and tired of the job. Because if you had any measure of self-control and judgment, and he does, we've seen it, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't go out in the White House press room and say, people say this is politicized. Well, it should be politicized. So the murder of these people should be politicized. I'm sure their families were gratified to hear that. Those families deserve better than that, and they deserve a leader better than that. And the president probably, upon reflection, although he'll never admit it, upon reflection probably wishes he hadn't done it either. Because hasn't moved the ball a yard down the field for what he wants to accomplish, may have moved it backwards, and makes him look small. And I'll tell you, the one thing that you can't do as President of the United States is look or be small. Diminishes the office, diminishes your ability to be able to do your work. And you shouldn't be doing that. So that's why I would have dealt with it. Yes, sir, right here.
Retired Army, 21 years.
Yes, sir. Here's a microphone for you.
Two-part question.
Sure.
One is with the downsizing. We're making the military a lot smaller. I work with the 10th Mountain Division a lot. They went over to Iraq, Afghanistan. They come back for a year. They go back a year and a half later, spend another year. The soldiers not going to complain. The families are serving. You got young kids there, 25, 26. Now you got a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old. Now the father's gone. The mother hasn't learned how to do finances yet, anything else. Comes back for a year, everything gets stabilized, they get sent over again. Retention rate was terrible because people were getting out. They loved the Army, but they couldn't afford it anymore. With hardships on the family, everything else. And the second part of the question is, once they come back, the VA is terrible. What can you do to fix it?
Sure. Let's deal with that in order. First thing is, if you go to my website, you will see that I put out a very specific plan on both a rebuilding of our military and our intelligence capability in the world, with specific numbers. No less than 500,000 active duty soldiers in the Army. No less than 185,000 active duty Marines in the Marine Corps. No fewer than 350 ships in the Navy, and no fewer than 2,600 coded aircraft ready to go to battle. And we are well below that now. We are heading to a Navy that's not been this small since World War I. He's looking to cut the Air Force by 50%. He's already reduced the Army now down to 400,000, not 500,000. It's exactly what you're talking about. It creates this need for those men and women who stay to be deployed over and over and over again. And same thing with the Marine Corps. So we have a specific plan to do that. And that's part of the reason we're doing entitlement reform, is to take some of that money and be able to invest it in rebuilding the military. And we need to do that. And so you'll get all the specifics on it, on the Ohio class of submarines, the modernization of those. There's a number of things we need to do that the president has been unwilling to do because he believes that America is just another country in the world. That's his core belief, that we're just another country in the world. And I don't believe that. I believe we need to be the leader of the world and the most powerful nation in the world in order to provide peace and stability for the world, not to create war, to provide peace and stability. And our strength is what provides that peace and stability. Our weakness is what provides what's going on right now. As to the VA, I'd say two things. First is that I absolutely agree with you that the VA is a mess, and we shouldn't ask you to wait any longer for us to fix it. So what I would do when I become president is say that any veteran anywhere in this country presents their veterans card to any doctor or any hospital, and they get health care paid for immediately by the government, no matter where it is you go. Because we've so messed up this VA system that you can't get health care in a timely fashion in many places around this country, and you have been promised that. You deserve it, you've earned it, and we should give it to you. But we also need to fix the VA system, because there's lots of specialty care that's given at the VA that we need for the men and women who come back from combat. So, with all due respect to the generals and the admirals, I don't think we need another general or admiral in charge of the VA. The VA is a hospital system now. That's what it is. And so I would, as president, go to the best CEO of the best hospital system in America and say to them during the transition, your country needs you. These veterans need you. I want you to come and spend 2 years running the VA and fixing this hospital system. We don't need a general admiral to do it. We need a hospital executive to do it. And if we get the best hospital executive we can find in the country and appeal to their patriotism, I think they'll come. And then we'll fix that system so that the specialties, the expertise, and the compassion of many of the people that work at the VA, and there are, as you know, lots of really good people who work at the VA, who care about vets and want to help them. We need to make sure they have a system that allows them to give them that help. And so that's the two ways that I would fix the system. One is a short-term fix to make sure you get the care you need while we're fixing the system, but then the long-term fix is to fix the system and bring in a hospital executive to do it. And that's what we should do. And that's what I would do for the vets. Yes, ma'am. There you go.
So, Governor Christie, thank you for being here. One of the concerns I have, I've got a son 2 years away from college, and paying for that is, now that we're looking at it, and we have done our due diligence and put money away, and I remember when we were very young, my husband and I, sitting in front of our financial planner, and he said, well, are we saving for a public school or private school? And of course I said, well, private school. And then he laid out what that meant, and I said, okay, public school. And whatever. And then the reality is, now that we're 2 years away from our son going to school, even that money that's put away, and really looking at the finances of the schools, even a fine school like the University of New Hampshire that my husband and I went to, the cost of that is just astronomical compared to what we paid. Any thoughts on making it just a little easier?
Yeah, lots. First off, because I feel I'm already feeling the pain you're anticipating, right? So Mary Pat and I have 2 children in college right now. Our son Andrew is a senior at Princeton, and our daughter Sarah is a sophomore at Notre Dame. So when we paid those bills in August, the tuition this year for the two of them is $122,000. And yeah, I'll tell you one quick story about Notre Dame. So our daughter has always wanted to go to Notre Dame. She got in. We're proud of her. She's there. She loves it. This summer, we got a letter from Father Jenkins, the president of Notre Dame, in July. And it was typical Notre Dame letter, right? It's great. First of all, priest is writing it, right? So Father Jenkins, the first paragraph, it's not exactly this, but it's something to this effect. He's like, dear parents, we want to thank you for the blessing of entrusting the souls of your children to us for their education over the next number of years. Like when you get done reading the paragraph, you can hear the theme from Rudy playing in the background, right? You close your eyes, you see the Golden Dome and Touchdown Jesus, your heart's pounding, and it's a priest, right? And I'm a Catholic. I'm like, this is, oh, look, Father Jenkins. So you know what the next paragraph is. Anybody who's a Catholic in this room knows it. It's the money paragraph, right? They get the heart pounded, and then they move in for the kill. The next paragraph is, that's why we're so pleased to tell you that tuition this year at Notre Dame will increase only 3.9%. Now remember, we're in a 1 to 1.5% inflation world. Only 3.9%, which is the lowest annual tuition increase at Notre Dame in 40 years. So you want to know why when you sat down with that financial planner and you said, well, private, and now you're looking at the bills and you're going, man, we can't even afford public? Well, if a 4% annual increase is the lowest increase that they've had in Notre Dame in 40 years, we know why we can't keep up. So I'd say there's a few solutions to the problem. The first is on the student side. Right now, if you take student loans, you can't renegotiate those student loans. You can't refinance them. And you're paying well above market rates. We shouldn't be making money off our kids. It's unseemly. And so they should be able to refinance their loans just like we can refinance a mortgage or a car loan or any other loan at a lower rate if it's available and we're eligible for it. We should do that. We don't permit them to do it now. We should. Second, we should provide a national service option to our kids when they leave school. Not just a military service, but a national service option. So that if you want to work to serve your community, serve your state, serve your country in some capacity, and we allow you to get credits off of your loans for that. We should give kids that option so that they don't have to walk out in the world with no options, but to be carrying this huge debt burden on their back. But we need to do more than just help them. We need to stop the schools from doing what they're doing. So, for instance, let's say you came here this morning, as you did, to MoeJoes for breakfast, and let's say after we're done here and they come by with the checks, let's say you and your son had breakfast and they gave you the check, you turned it over, and it said food, $30. You'd call the waiter back over and you'd say, hey, by the way, bud, could you write out exactly what we had and how much each of the items cost so I know what this is? College bill. We just paid them. There are 3 lines. Tuition, room and board, other fees. Right? $62,000. And we don't ask a thing. We go, okay, where do I send the check? We wouldn't pay for a $30 breakfast that way. We demand from the waiter the details. Yet colleges, no details. Now, I made this fun of UNH. You're a UNH alum. Your husband's a UNH alum. There is an epidemic in this nation going on right now, right beneath our eyes, of rock climbing walls on college campuses. Every college campus I go to has a rock climbing wall. Right now, okay, I was in Iowa at Iowa State. They had no rocks in Iowa, so maybe they need a rock climbing wall there if you want to kind of simulate that. UNH has a rock climbing wall, okay? You have rocks right outside. Go outside, climb those rocks, okay? We don't need to build a rock climbing wall at UNH. Now, of course, when I said this, one press story wrote, the headline was, Christie's assault on fitness on college campuses. Now, I got to tell you the truth. I have engaged in many assaults on fitness. That's not one of them. Again, I'm trying to make a larger point. We don't know what these guys are spending our money on. And so we need to require transparency in the way they spend it. They should have to detail what the tuition money is going to, what the room and board money is going to, what the other fees money is going to, so you can see it. I think it would cause enormous embarrassment if you actually saw it. Secondly, we need to allow you to unbundle your bill. So let's say your son wants to go to UNH. And let's say he decides, I want to live at home, I don't want to live on campus. Live on campus. But let's just say he wants to live at home, not live on campus. Well, you should be able to pick, because the college experience becomes completely different if you're a commuter versus a resident. You should be able to pick and unbundle that bill. Only buy the services he wants to buy and that you want to buy. And if you do those two things, you start to put some market forces on these prices, because if nobody picks the rock climbing wall, it's not going to get built because no one's going to pay for it. If no one picks the 50th vice president in charge of paperwork, the 9th science building, we need to make these colleges have market forces on them, because right now, what's the market force on this, right? It's crazy. If you came to MoeJoes and let's say breakfast was $60 for the two of you, you'd go, hey, listen, it was a good breakfast, but $60, it's not a $60 breakfast. You'd go to another place. Now, my daughter's at Notre Dame. She loves it. She sends me pictures to my phone all the time of the Golden Dome and of First Down Moses and all the rest of these characters that are all across campus, and she tells me how much she loves it. Now, let's say when we got that $62,000 bill this summer, we called her downstairs and we said, Sarah, listen, here's the thing. We don't believe that Notre Dame anymore is a value at $62,000. We think it's too expensive. So we're going to send you to School X, which is less expensive. You know, as a parent, what would have happened, right? My 19-year-old daughter, after the stamping of the feet and the crying and running upstairs and slamming her door shut and saying, you're ruining my life and all the rest of that, guess what? If we can figure out any way to send her back to Notre Dame, we're doing it. And the colleges know that. They know we're not making choices almost ever by price. We're making them out of a sense of love and devotion to our children, which for almost every parent is boundless. And so we'll take on whatever debt we need to take on, whatever burdens we need to take on to make sure our child gets a great education at a place they love so they can get the best start to their life they can. They're feeding on us. They know we won't say no. So we got to get market forcing the other way. Last thing is, how would we get this done? If you're not willing to unbundle the bills, if you're not willing to detail what you spend it on, then you cannot participate in the federal student loan programs or the federal grant programs. That'll get their attention. They want taxpayer money. You need to tell us what you're spending our money on, and you need to give us choices as the taxpayers. I think that's an easy fix to this, because then all of a sudden we're going to get their attention. It's like talking to the business people, from the gentleman who asked the question over there about, E-Verify. If you're finding them double what they make, you get their attention. If we're telling them none of your students can get federal student loans or federal grants unless you do this, they're going to do it, because the value of getting those loans and grants for their students is much more to their bottom line than whatever monkey business they're playing around in now. And we got to get tough about this. We've been too soft on these colleges and universities, and we need to make sure that they understand enough. When kids are walking out of an undergraduate education with 6 figures in debt, that is unacceptable. And it impedes their ability to get married, to buy a home, to start a family, because they're carrying all this debt they can't afford to. So those are the things I would do. And that's not just as president, that's as a parent. And understanding how we make these choices. Whether I think, Notre Dame is a value at $62,000 or not, my daughter does. And I want her to be happy, and I want her to be successful. The same way you want your son to be happy and successful. So we got to balance that, and we need a little help from the government to say, all right, guys, the game's over. 4% being the lowest increase in 40 years. It's time to rein this in a little bit, and we need to. I respect what colleges and universities do. We have some of the best ones in the world, but $62,000 a year is a lot of money. A lot of money, and you wonder what the value is that you're getting back. So that's the way I would approach it. All right, they're telling me I can take one more question, which means I will take 2, because I want my staff to understand that I am still the boss. So yes, sir, we'll take 2.
Thank you. In my simple way of thinking about things, I see Democrats as being able to make decisions mostly by using the heart, emotional, whereas Republicans take a different view of it, and they look at how are we going to do it? How much is it going to cost? What does that mean? Who's going to implement it? They go into it in a lot more detail, and frankly, with people's attention spans being in the second, almost not double-digit range, it's very hard to go through and explain why free college at only $18 billion or whatever I think $18 trillion was talked about, means almost $16,000 a year for a family of 4 if you divide it amongst all of the people in the United States equally. And I don't think there's very many people that honestly would say, I'm willing to spend $16,000 a year when my kid's only 1 year old, so that's part of the family, over the lifetime of my child, so that when I get to be a parent sending my kid to college, that they actually will get it for free, because it's not free. It's 16 years forever. I mean, $16,000 a year forever. How do you get people to listen to the rationale that makes some of these emotional decisions that seem so easy? Oh yeah, free this, free cell phones, free medical care forever, free school, free bus trips to the casino, free whatever you want. How do you say, but listen to what you're agreeing to, and yet have it make sense if you got a 10-second soundbite, which you probably have a lot of familiarity with being on television, and
I do.
You get sound bites.
Yeah. Listen, I was on stage in the CNN debate for 3 hours, and I spoke for 10 minutes. Hardest thing in the world is just, it's not the 10 minutes that's hard. It's the 2 hours and 50 minutes when you got to be interested and look interested, because the camera could be on you at any moment. Yeah, it's hard. It is hard, but listen, it's not an excuse not to figure out a way to do it, right? So I would say to you that I don't believe Democrats operate with their heart first. They operate with a different emotion, and that's the pander emotion. It is that they try to look into your eyes and figure out what it is you want to hear, and then say it to you, without regard to whether it's feasible or not, regardless of whether they even intend to do it or not. And so I think that part of this is the American people have seen 7 years of this now, right? This was a lot more difficult a burden for John McCain in 2008, after 8 years of George W. Bush, to try to convince people that the things that Barack Obama was saying were fantasy. People now understand that when the President of the United States looked them in the eye and said, if you like your doctor, you can keep him, that was a lie. If you like your health plan, you can keep it. Lie. Absolute lie. Of course he knew it. Of course he knew it. But he was appealing to what you were talking to, was a simple soundbite, and people went, oh, okay. If I can keep my doctor and I can keep my health plan, well, then why would I be opposed to this? Now the American people have seen they couldn't keep their doctor. They couldn't keep their health plan. They've heard now from him that our deal with Iran means we can have 24-hour a day, 7-day-a-week verification. Then we find out what it really means is that you got to wait 24 days before you can inspect anywhere. And I'll tell you this, as a guy from New Jersey who was a federal prosecutor, that's like telling me I get a search warrant for somebody, and I get to go to their house, knock on the door, and say, hi, I have a search warrant to search your home for evidence of criminal conduct. I'll be back in 24 days. Now, I want to tell you something. Even the dumbest criminals in New Jersey would know to get that evidence out of there in 24 days. And we pride ourselves, by the way, on having some of the dumbest criminals in America. But even they would be able to figure out, get that out of there. The advantage we have this time is the president has consistently lied to the American people about things that they really wanted to believe were true. And so my job next fall, standing on the stage with Hillary Clinton, will be to remind people of that. That the things that sound too good to be true are. And you don't have to take my word for it. Can you keep your doctor? Did you keep your health plan? Over and over and over again. It's the big lie of the Obama administration, and it's the only legacy. His only two legacies now are Obamacare and a nuclear deal with Iran, which are the two biggest lies of his 2 terms. That's what we need to remind the American people. Is that the same way you know as a parent when your kids are telling you stuff that's too good to be true, and your common sense, your instinct takes over and goes, yeah, no. You ask a couple more questions. I think that's where the American people are right now. They want a lot more information this time. They voted for a bumper sticker last time. Hope and change. Sounds great. Now they know what hope and change is. Not so good. And I think that's the challenge of the next Republican nominee for president, is to be the person who prosecutes the case against the Democratic Party on that stage. And when you look at the 15 people that we have remaining on this stage, I want you to ask yourself when you're trying to decide, who's the best person to stand across from Hillary Clinton and prosecute the case against her and her ideas? Who's the person who's going to be the best person to articulate that and to hold her to account? I would suggest to you that somebody who's actually been a federal prosecutor, who did that for 7 years in one of the toughest places in this country, is the right person to be on that stage, who will not take a load of garbage from Mrs. Clinton. So that's what we need to do. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it's never easy. It's never easy. And, this very much reminds me of the 1980 election. You had a failed presidency that everybody knew was failed, with a weak leader. And up until the last 10 days of that campaign, Ronald Reagan was consistently behind in the polls. And he was able very simply to present to the American people an easy question, right? Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And people understood it. It crystallized it for them. And the challenge for me as the nominee of the party is going to be to make sure I crystallize in people's minds everything they've felt over the last 7 years. And if I do that effectively, I'm going to be the next president of the United States. And if I don't, I won't. So no pressure on me, just go out there and do the best you can, right? It'll work out. We'll be fine. And I am endlessly optimistic about our ability to do this. I really am. I really believe that if we nominate the right person, we're going to win. But we got to get to it. All right, Alex, you can have the last question. I told you we're going to have one. You can have my microphone.
Thank you, Governor. I'm really excited because I'm so proud to be helping you as one of your New Hampshire interns, and this is my second town hall. I know last time I was so close to getting to ask a question, but I actually didn't, so I'm really excited for this one. I'm wondering, Governor, how you will help suffering workers that are stuck in forced unionism. Will you stand up for the National Right to Work Act and the Employee Rights Act, because there are so many union members that are forced to be in unions that are dealing with intimidation and union coercion that I've experienced myself. Will you stand with us?
Thank you, Alex. Of course I will. And here's the thing. I see in New Jersey, which is one of the most heavily unionized states in America, And this problem is particularly acute in the public sector. There's going to be a case in front of the United States Supreme Court this fall about whether or not you can force people to be in public sector unions and force them to pay dues. Is that an infringement on their right of free speech? I would tell you, I think it is. My mother was a member of the teachers union in New Jersey. And it used to frost her when she'd see those union dues taken out of her paycheck every 2 weeks. Because she'd say to me, they take that money and they spend it to support candidates I don't agree with. Why can they take my money and spend it on those candidates? I don't want my money spent on those candidates. And I think the Supreme Court's got a big job ahead of them this fall to say no. If money is speech, which they said in Citizens United, that your ability to write a check to a candidate is an exercise of your free speech rights, then it should be an exercise of your free speech rights to say no. I don't want to give money to an organization who supports candidates I don't agree with. And this is going to be an enormous thing for the future of education in our country, I will tell you that. Because let me tell you what the teachers union in New Jersey does. They collect every year from every school employee $731 per employee for their union dues. We have 200,000 members of the teachers union. Do the math, it's $140 million a year that they collect. And by the way, they don't collect it, we do. The government collects it and then wire transfers it to them. Free of charge, by the way. And they get that money and they don't contribute a nickel to teacher salaries, teacher pension, or teacher health care. It's a $140 million political slush fund used to reward their friends and to hurt their enemies. And it makes them an enormous force in this country. I'll give you an example of how the Democratic Party is owned lock, stock, and barrel by the teachers union. Campbell Brown, the former CNN anchor, has now become an activist for school choice. She's having forums. She had a forum here in New Hampshire for the Republican candidates for president to come and speak in front of her group on their ideas about education in America. Campbell Brown wanted to set up the same kind of forum in Iowa for the Democratic candidates. Every one of the Democratic candidates declined the invitation. And none of the campaigns will comment on why they declined. Who's the only person who put out a statement? Randy Weingarten, the president of the American Federation of Teachers, who put out a statement that basically said Campbell Brown is anti-education and we're for public schools and public teachers, and that's why the Democratic candidates are not showing up at this forum. Bought and paid for, everybody. Bought and paid for. And so what you're talking about, Alex, is really important because it's about the future of the educational system in our country. Because what Randy Weingarten says she wants is more teachers, smaller class sizes, greater salaries. You don't ever hear her mention specific ideas about how to improve failing schools in this country, except for it to lead to more members for her union and more money for those members. And by the way, remember this about the New Jersey law, which I think exists in most states, and I know in the case that they brought before the Supreme Court. They say, oh, you don't have to be a member of the union. But if you choose not to be a member of the union, you still have to pay what's called a representation fee, because they say you benefit even if you're not a member from their work. So you pay 85% of $731. So, you know, being in the teachers union in New Jersey is like being in the Hotel California. For those of you of my age and remember the Eagles and remember that song, you remember the last words of the song. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. For the teachers union in New Jersey, you can check out anytime you like, but leave your 85% of $731 on the table before you go. This is anti-American. We should not be forcing people to be members of organizations they don't want to be a member of. And it's only about pure political muscle, everybody. That's all it's about. So I'm going to end with this. First off, by saying thank you to all of you for showing up early this morning, 7:30, 8 o'clock at MoeJoes to come and listen to me. I appreciate it. Mary Pat and I both appreciate it. It gives us great renewed confidence in our democracy. When I tell people from back home in New Jersey about what it's like to run for president in New Hampshire, I tell them that you should come up here because it renews your faith in our democracy. Because folks like you take your job as seriously as you take it, being the folks who are going to help to vet out this field for the rest of the country for president. And I'm doing 2 more of these today. So, I'm going to get some water, and we're going to keep grinding away, because the most important thing that you can do as a candidate for president of the United States is to let people get to hear you and see you and let you ask me questions about the things that matter to you. And I hope that you'll demand of any other candidate you go and see the exact same thing. Because we bought a bumper sticker 7 years ago. We don't want to do that again. And if you listen to me, you'll know exactly what kind of presidency you're going to get. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the rest of this campaign. And for anybody who thinks it's almost over, just remember something. We just finished week 4 of the NFL season. We have to finish the entire regular season, all the playoffs, and the Super Bowl before you vote. So it's a long way to go. We're going to keep grinding away and working hard to earn your trust and your support and your vote. And if we do, we can make this country a better place for everybody. And that's what our goal should be, to make this place better for our children and grandchildren. But knowing that, I still wouldn't trade places with anybody in the world, because this is still the greatest country in the world with the greatest possibilities for an even greater future. So thank you for coming this morning. I appreciate it very much.